So Johnny, yeah, I've known you for, I have no idea. I've known you for a while.
It could be 7, could be 8, could be
Yeah,
9, could be 10 years. Who
it's the age of
knows? Yeah.
COVID. It could be a decade, it could be a minute. Who the hell knows? Time
Yeah.
is irrelevant
Yeah.
nowadays. But yeah, I've known you for a long time, ish, and yeah, and I think what you do is really interesting, and I'm curious about it. And I want to talk a bit about and the kind of the overall arc of it, and where you've been, what you've learned, where you're heading, and about the company itself, and all that kind of good stuff. So just kind of launch into it. I mean, I think there's always a story. When I talk to founders, there's always a story where someone says, a founder will say something like, yeah, I think I need to make something, or this is driving me insane. I want to solve this problem. So I'm going to build a little tool to deal with it. And, hey, people like this. Maybe I'll build something out of it. There's always something like a germ there that kind of kicked the whole thing off. And there's, then there'd be a series of maybe, where you try it again to solve a problem for a customer. Maybe I'm not, whatever it is. What was your moment? What kind of kicked you off?
Yeah, so you get a lot of stories around the founder or founders have this clear vision and problem they want to solve in the world. They execute on it, and then there's a detour, but they get back on track, and then they end up solving the world's problem, and they make this massive company. That's not us, right? that's not my story, right? Not directly. So I was a recruiter, a staffing agency recruiter, Martin, doing accounting and finance recruiting. And I got poached to go work in the Cayman Islands, and which is a whole different story. But I was running a recruitment agency in the Cayman Islands, doing a temp desk, hiring everything from admins to butchers to accountants and lawyers and all sorts of weird stuff, weird and wonderful stuff you find yourself on a small island. And I basically was meant to be going back to Ireland to set up a recruitment agency with my previous boss. I'd left the company in the middle of an earn-out from my boss. I had a lucrative deal that I walked away from because, who turns down an opportunity to live in the Caribbean? Yes. And but we'd agreed, let's just do it. When his earn-out finishes, let's come back and we'll be partners. And without going into the detail of that right now, it didn't work out. And I found myself hanging up on my cell phone one day, sitting on the ground in my board shorts and Havaianas outside a supermarket, 6 days before Christmas. 13 days before I was to fly home forever to Ireland, going, okay, I'm not going home. I don't have a plan anymore because I'd pulled out of this deal with my partner. And then over the following 6 months, I got back in touch with an Irish guy who I'd met on Ireland, who'd left to go home to Ireland. He'd ran the sales team for a telecoms company, an Irish telecoms company down there called Digicel. And I heard he was coming back to the island because he'd been offered the managing director job. I called him up and said, dude, don't do that. You hate that company. He's like, yeah, I do, but the money's great. And I said, dude, you can make a fortune with me. And I sent him a spreadsheet that had lots of zeros on the end of ones and bigger numbers to say, this is what you make in recruiting. Let's do it together. So I moved home to set up a staffing agency in partnership with Vince, my partner. And we were very excited. We were going to set up a staffing agency that was going to recruit people from all over the world into the Caribbean. And this was July 2008. So by the time we got our desk together, I had a baby on the way. He had a newborn baby. By the time the dust had settled on my new IKEA desk, Bear Stearns had fallen. All the big banks had collapsed. The headlines when my first son was born was, is the worst recession we've ever seen. Turns out it isn't. And we're sitting there going, oh God, we're running a staffing agency trying to find people in the Caribbean when the world's gone to heck. So through brute force and necessity, we kind of figured out a way to make that business work. And the model that I've been used to for 10 years up to then, which is what everyone was, which you have a database, you recruit from it, use your network, you find talent, just didn't work. So at the time, social media was exploding. So 2007, you remember, is when Facebook left campuses and became more public. LinkedIn was a tiny site at the time, but a few people had joined. I joined in 2006, I think, and it was like, what is this? And hadn't touched it since. And we figured out that, you could actually find people's names and job titles online. And there was a way of doing it. And you could use these social media sites, Twitter, Facebook and stuff, to advertise your jobs, and people would apply and they'd help you and they'd reach out to you and communities would build. And we did this like in really, really fast iterative trial and error. Like literally, we couldn't mess around. We couldn't go, I wonder, can you hire on Twitter? It was like, I need to put bread on the table, literally bread on the table to feed my family of 3 next week. I need to make money. And if Twitter can't make me money, I need to run away from it and find something else that did. So in the first year, we began what I now know as sourcing talent and recruiting on social media. And we had moderate success, as in we weren't poor, we weren't thrown out of our homes. And by the second year of the business, or a year later, we hired a couple of staff. We were like, this works. And I started just attending just to get a network conferences in Dublin for other recruiters to get together and share their insights. And they were depressing because everyone had their head down. It was like the world is ending. We just laid off another half of our staff. It was all depressing. And I was like, well, things are going okay for us. We're growing. I'm actually quite excited. And so people asked me to share what we're doing, which was cool because, I wasn't in competition with anyone there. I was working from I literally had a porta cabin, a porta cabin, the kind of mobile office. They lift with a crane into your back garden. You see them on construction sites.
Yep. Sure.
I had one of those lifted into my garden as my office, right? It cost me like $40 a month, and had a little, I piped electricity into it for a heater. And I went on Skype at 8 a.m. and left Skype on. My business partner was working in a 200-year-old house he was trying to renovate that had no heating. He had a 40-meter flex going into his temporary house, into the building, to power his desk, which was freezing cold. And he had one glove, fingerless glove, that he typed with, because one side of him had the heater and the other side had no heater. So he had to have a fingerless glove to type during the winter on Skype to me, right? This is Vince. And this is how we recruited, right? We made hires. And a year in, people are going like, this is really good. Can you teach us? Can you show us? So I started showing people, talking about it. And then I said, about kind of October, November 2010, I said to Vince, I said, there's something in this, I said, either we're going to be the only recruiting agency in the world that recruits this way, which is doubtful, or we can be the company that teaches everyone else how to do this thing, because it seems like nobody else is doing this, apart from a few people online, like you were finding, the likes of Jim Stroud writing about it, Shally Stecker writing about it online. They were just selling their cheat sheets for whatever, $50 to download and stuff. That was all there was. How to use Google. But we thought we much more insight because it was much more practical. So as a hedge to our recruiting agency, we set up Social Talent as a company that would do the social media and sourcing stuff for you. And very quickly, we realized, and by the way, that was just me at the time. It was me plus an intern after 2 months. Vince would still run the staffing agency. I'd set this consultancy up. And within about 3 or 4 months, we were like, we're not a consultancy, we're a training company. And we had to sack the small number of consulting companies we had. Like, we were doing social media for a couple of recruiting agencies, 1 or 2 in-house recruiting teams, but also like for a bar, right? A bar and restaurant, for a used car auto place, because we take any money that we could get back in 2009,
sure. Well, as you do.
You had to survival, but we taught us good techniques. And anyway, within the first year of Social Talent, we realized, this is the business. This is taking off. It's growing. I started doing free webinars. Like, I get so excited when 8 people will come onto my webinar, double the previous week. I was like, this is cool. You're getting, sitting in my porta cabin in Ireland, but I'd upgraded to a really shitty office, but it was an office above a building, so it felt cool on a main street.
So what made it so shitty? I'm just kind of curious.
So the room fit 2 desks. Okay, so I had 1 desk and our intern was facing me, so they were like this on each other. But to have the chair on each side, we could have a chair on each side tucked in, but you couldn't pull back. So you had to just squeeze in. I'm a thin guy, she was thin, so we could squeeze, but that was it. And we had a window where we had Harry, our plant, sat in the window, and we kept our milk on the window because it was cold.
Wait, Harry, your plant?
Harry, our plant, because he was quite hairy, so he's like hairy. Harry.
We still have
Harry. Harry is still alive today, by the way. He's one of our plants in our office now.
That's fantastic.
He's a sacred thing. But that was it. It was awful office, but it was an office. It was so cool to have an office. So anyway, we moved around a bit there. We started growing, and we had to shut down the agency because we just needed more resources. And the agency had kept me going because I had no income for the first 6 months, and I just took income from the recruiting agency. But eventually, it was like the income was on a par, and we thought, we just need to focus. So Vince made his team redundant, 2 or 3 people. He moved over to Social Talent, became kind of full-time with us, and we started growing. And the business then, Martin, was doing in-house training. Quite quickly realized doing a training course in an office. Like, it was mainly recruiting agencies, staffing agencies. So I'd rock up and we do an 8-hour course I'd have my slide deck, I'd have my handouts, and we charge, $1,000 a day at the start, €1,000 a day for the course. And that was great. And then it got to the point where I was like 4 to 5 days a week, I was delivering this course, and we kept increasing the price and we got more demand. But I was going up and down Ireland, first of all, then up and down the UK. And then I was finding myself across the Nordics, in Finland and Sweden, in Denmark, and in the Netherlands. Bizarrely, those countries, I have no idea why or how that happened. And I was unbelievably stretched. And that was the limit of our business, because how often could I train, So we kind of went, oh, let's hire loads of trainers, And we basically went to get funding, a grant from the Irish government, to hire 30 trainers. And they laughed at us. They rightly laughed at us. Said, you're teaching people digital skills, and the way you're going to do it is through an analog way, like classroom training. Stupid guys. And so we said, right, you're right. We need to put this online. And so I'd hired a videographer as our second employee, because, immersed in social media, I knew video was going to be important. I had no idea how it was going to be important. Not a clue. I just hired somebody. And Nicola, still with us today, she runs our production team. Her first video she ever made for money in our business, to be clear, was she had to go to a butcher's, so a meat processing factory, and film how a machine minced meat, because the manufacturer of the machine wants to have an ad video for it. And we're like, that's $200, no problem, justifies her salary. And we're like, how else do we make money out of video? So thankfully we said, why don't we film our training content? That makes sense. And if we could put it online, but we'd no software developers, no coding. And so I got introduced through a buddy of mine in London in recruiting to a company that they used, had a platform that could host video content and people could learn on it. And we agreed, they were a tiny startup in London as well. And we agreed to do a revenue share. That meant we could have software leased, if you like, instantly. And we did a rev share with them for a year. We outgrew them. And then we, stumbled upon some coders who said, hey, we'll build this for you and you can pay us after it starts to make money for you. And then that was our beginning of our development team, which we still have today in 2 teams in Poland. And, over the course of the next couple of years, we transitioned the business from a training business to an online training business to a learning platform business, which it is today. So we work with, we trained over 100,000 people to date, recruiters on that platform. We're the leading hiring skills platform, and organizations like IKEA and Intel and Uber and tons of others use us globally to scale hiring best practice in their business, in their recruiters, in their hiring managers, anyone who touches hiring. And we're an on-demand digital platform with 80 plus experts kind of feeding curricula every 2 weeks. That is the kind of best practice of how you do everything you can imagine in hiring. But this is not where I thought I'd end up when I was sitting outside that supermarket in the Cayman Islands in Christmas 2007. So you find a way, because the itch just moves around and you keep scratching it. I guess if you were to find a commonality, Mark, and I'll close on this, I haven't talked for too long. It's that, we realized recruiting was shit back in 2008. It took a recession for us to realize this. It was just, hadn't innovated for 10 years. When I joined recruiting in 98, it was beginning to innovate. We were having digital CVs and resumes emailed to us. We were posting jobs on job boards as opposed to lineage ads in the newspaper. And that was the last bit of innovation for, I would argue, for 10 years. And the next wave came in the recession of 08. And we rode that wave, which brings us to today, to the recession of 2020. I'm quite excited because I think it's going to force a massive new wave of innovation, not only in hiring, but in talent in general. Kind of, you talk about the future of work is now and these kind of things. So yeah, it brings us back to where we are today. And again, whilst recessions are daunting, the fact that we started a business in a recession and got to where we are today gives me huge comfort to know that we can do it again.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good insight. And it's the idea that, after a rainstorm, you get flowers, right? Or mushrooms or whatever you want. But it spurs growth, but it's tough to go through. It really is. But there's this sort of cycle that happens where point solutions get kind of sucked into larger platforms. The folks who were running the point solutions have a little bit of revenue. They have time. They're building something else. I spoke to the Hennessy's who did Smashfly, and were really instrumental in Brass Ring and Taleo. Now they're married and they just smash fly, and they're doing something right now. The same idea. They've been sitting around their board, and so they're making stuff. So yeah, I think to your point, we're gonna see things. I'm excited about that portion once we get through it. That's the silver lining to all this, I think. So I think you're right on that. But so tell me, so you're sitting outside that grocery store. That's a really compelling image in my mind. Just sort of you're in your board shorts, it's beautiful out, you're in paradise, and you're thinking, holy crap, what's going to happen? So there's sort of that dichotomy of location and probably, I'm assuming, kind of emotional feeling. But what did you go through? What was that like? How did you kind of carry through that?
So I guess the initial thing was like, just I needed to protect where I was. I hadn't resigned from my job because I didn't get on with my boss, and I knew the second I resigned, she'd walk me off the island. I needed to buy time, so that was really lucky that I hadn't resigned. So I still was, had a job to go back to the next day. I had given notice on my apartment. I had told my tenant back in Ireland to leave. So my wife was going to stay on the island for 6 more months. She's a primary school teacher, so she was going to finish out the term and come back in the summertime. So really it was just like, okay, like I'm staying because I have no other option. So let's just figure that stuff out. So we spent Christmas finding a new home. I literally let my BA flight just disappear with me on it. And we told our family, not coming home. I'm going to stay here for a while. Don't know what I'm doing. I'm going to still stick at my job. And I realized I'm going to have to be here for a while. So I better start getting on better with my boss. So I was like, I got to figure out a way to get her on side so we have a good relationship. So that was the next couple of months, just kind of going, I just need to protect what I have right here. And so when, and that's kind of parallel to the pandemic. March is just protect what when we hit March time here, it's like protect what you have and focus on that. And it's only when you feel that you've got some level of comfort in terms of what you have, and you kind of it's more solid and you're more sure of it, that you begin to start thinking of the future and dreaming. So it took me a couple of months back in early 08 to start doing that. And then I did get to the point where it was like, okay, now that it's back to normal here and it's okay, it's cool, I have a plan, I'm secure again, I want something new, I want something better. And so then it was like, what will I do? And I knew I wanted to, at the time, run a staffing agency. It's what I knew. It's all I knew. And I had an idea for it, but I also knew I wanted a business partner. And I was meant to go into partnership with my old boss, but actually the definition of partnership was 60-40 in his favor. And it got changed to 65-35. And I was like, this isn't a partnership.
Right.
So I said, I need to find someone I can really work with and trust, but it has to be 50-50. And so when the opportunity to work with Vince came along, and Vince had no background in recruiting, he was like, so I assume, you're going to be the majority partner. And I was like, no. I was like, this is 50-50 or it's nothing, because we're not partners. 51-49 is not even a partnership. I said, and I got to know Vince because we'd done a few projects together in the year he was on the island that I was on the island. And I just felt his ethics were right and his way of thinking was aligned to me, but he was different enough to not, clash. And that was the seed. It was just kind of, and the plan was, it literally back then was set up a recruitment agency, use my network, and we'll be fine. So strategy wise, Martin, the most complicated thing I was thinking of was, what's the name of the company, and do we have a website? Like, there wasn't a whole, what's our differentiator, what's our uniqueness, because recruiting is at a staffing agency level is or definitely was just very much a personal thing, but like real estate, you trust somebody and they'll look after it. What's the company name? Don't care. I trust Martin, so I'll let him, help me find talent, because he's done it for years. So I was just leveraging my relationship. That was as much as a strategy I had. So it just needed to go, there's a date. And then I moved home, and and then the recession happened.
Amazing. Yeah, it's that kind of up and down. So you get the kind of vision thing going. You're working with Vince. You're making it function. Recession hits, and you're pivoting again. But what I'm getting is you've got your general optimism. I would is my sense from just knowing you as a person, obviously, and this story. Any moments where it was just sort of really dark, where you were just sort of, how do you build out of that when you're feeling that far down? How do you get back to who you really are as an optimist?
So one of our team, our head of product, slags me about this. He said, just as there's clinical depression, he thinks I have clinical optimism. It has to be a phenomenon that to be explored. And And I do, and like I was blessed to be born with an optimistic outlook, right? It's not as if it just comes to me. Like, and I think in the same way, you know, it's misfortune if you have a more depressive outlook. It just is what it is. People can tell you, they can tell you to be happy, but if you have depression, you have depression. You can tell me to be sad. I'm not going to be sad because I don't know how to be, right? My brain doesn't work that way. So 99.999% of the time is no is the answer. But the benefit of having a partner is you'd have crap days. Like the early days of the recruiting business, a candidate would turn in a job offer, right? And you've paid the bills with that feed. It's gone. And that's a tough day. I found that there was any day I was down, Vince was up. Any day he was down, I was up. And that was really important. And I've talked to other friends who went into business by themselves without a partner, and they've commented that that's been the toughest part, not having somebody who's an equal to pick you up. So we picked each other up. Those rare dark days, you always had somebody else to snap you out of it, and that was really important. And that's something I'd always advise anyone going into business: if you can find someone who's a really good partner, who's your the yin to your yang, you know, it's on days like that you'll really count yourself lucky.
That's good. That's a good insight too. It can get lonely.
You can, yeah, big time.
Really can. Well, so all right. So you make it through a way. You begin transitioning into this learning platform. Your background is not in education. Your wife's a teacher, which I bet helped you a lot. I'm kind of assuming, just for advice. But how did you kind of build the methodology to deliver your instruction? Did you bring in educators or L&D experts, or how did you kind of scale that part of it?
So we didn't until much later. By the time we did, Martin, we realized that most of the important stuff around digital learning and learning in general, we'd actually stumbled across ourselves and figured out ourselves, right? In hindsight, maybe bringing that person in early would have, helped us skip some of those steps of learning. But my insight was I knew recruiters, and our platform in the early days was purely for recruiters and for sourcers even in the very early days. And I could picture our customers, our users at their desks in their offices. And I knew they didn't want to log on and watch training videos. Like I just knew that because I was one of those. And I didn't want to do that when I was recruiting. And the motivation was I want to make fees. I'm not going to spend any time doing anything else that doesn't generate me more income. Right. And that was the cut and thrust of that staffing agency environment. So my insight was to go, I'm building for that person. So how do I get that person to realize that there's lots they don't know? And if they just knew it, they could make more fees. They could be a better recruiter. They could do better business, be faster, all these different things. And it was, again, at the early stage, much more focused on staffing agencies. So the training material I produced, and I was the presenter for our very original kind of library of content, was appealing to somebody who I felt I knew really well, who I knew intimately because I'd spent so much time being one of those people. And I knew I had to get to the point very quickly. I had to lead with, this is why you should watch this video, and then explain something and then remind them. So we had this concept we call why, how, why. And that was our concept. And we said their attention span's short. So originally we had videos that were 10 to 15 minutes long. And then quite quickly we learned that was too long. And we got it down to 3 minutes. So we stumbled across 3 minutes by trial and error, but it turns out 3 minutes is kind of a universal standard now in microlearning that everyone uses. But we just did it because I knew my users were attention poor, and they just give up after 3 minutes. So I'd have to keep them engaged 3 minutes at a time. So at its core, that why, how, why, that 3 minute principle, and then just realizing that this was half education, but half show business. What I mean by that is that you have to entertain and excite. It's not good enough to just present the information. I have to excite you about the information, make you want to learn that, and then use that in your day-to-day job. And they were kind of our three pillars of our early learning, the why, how, why, that it's half entertainment as well as education, and the 3 minute short video. They became the kind of core experiences of our learning. And I didn't have an academic background in L&D for that. We didn't look for any insight. It was just, again, focusing on who's your user, and then getting the feedback from them. Say, does this work? Does it not? What we change? And again, that's why we rushed to develop our own platform, because again, our users and our customers were kind of saying, we need this and that. And we're like, really? And we'd investigate and go, yeah, I could see why you need that. But the platform provider wasn't necessarily aligned to that. We felt we knew our customer better than anyone, any L&D expert, any other software developers. We were attuned to their needs, and it worked.
So is that when you started to look at the platform you were on that first year and say, you can't support us because we need more innovation? Is that what kind of
Yeah,
drove that shift?
it initially was, we sent some feature requests and they were denied because, rightly so, the partner we were working with were building for everybody, all their customers. Our micro requests just didn't get to the top of the queue. But for us, we felt they were really important for our customers. So we, and this is, I'm not an engineer. I don't have a software background. I'm very mathematical though. Like I'm always very, very good at math. I'm I could write code I write HTML. I could build a basic website and understand CSS and HTML back in the day. So I understand the principles of coding and the logic of it. So my role has always been to kind of be the kind of, I can design architecturally or understand the architecture of what somebody needs to look at. And I never got into the coding. And I found a good team who I could trust, who could basically take my description. And I, again, was able to talk to them because I was able to present, challenges in a mathematical way. Like I'd write an if statement to explain what I want the system to do, which was great for an engineer to go, all right, rather, I imagine a lot of clients you might have as an engineer would kind of go, God, what is she talking about? Like, that's impossible. I go, well, the if statement, you just write it like this, that can work, and code that somehow. And, we start sketching out the design, or I initially was kind of go, I want it to be a hybrid of this screen plus this screen and this screen from this other application. And again, not being an LED person, I think, Martin, was really, really beneficial because I didn't know what learning systems look like. Turns out they look like shit and everyone hates them.
Yep.
I was there going like, I use LinkedIn, I use Facebook, I use Google. So these are my inspirations. So and this is what my customers use. So therefore it needs to, the navigation bar needs to feel familiar to a person who uses these tools. So we've always had that principle, where when we're introducing a new design idea, you have to bring three screenshots from other platforms to prove or to explain your idea and show that there is a precedent for this. Don't get your user to relearn concepts. Like, if LinkedIn has everything on the top, and again, for our users, like LinkedIn's navigation was more important than the navigation in Taleo or Bullhorn because they spent more time in my book than LinkedIn. So therefore, what does LinkedIn do? Like, how does an alert come in? It's probably going to be a bubble. How often? Well, they expect it to happen this often, so we should do that. So again, our tech didn't follow any learning precedents because we weren't interested in following the learning precedents. We wanted to follow consumer tech that our customer, our user, was very familiar with. And it was all driven around my belief that if we didn't do that, they just give up and use something else or just not use our platform. And the key was, we'd realized there's a way of recruiting, and this is where you get excited. There's a way of recruiting, and fuck me, if just everyone knew this way of recruiting, they'd just be much happier. Like recruiting would just be better. People go, recruiting sucks. And you're kind of going, but I know there's a better way. I just need more people to know that. That's been the big driving force. It's kind of not about, can we get more users to get more money? It's like, can we just share this? Like, recruiting doesn't need to be fixed. People go, I need to fix recruiting. Recruiting was fixed. Just nobody told you what the fix was.
That's great.
You know what I mean? So
yeah,
our
sure.
job has been just to tell the world what all the fixes are. Because today, I don't do much of our content anymore on our platform. Like, we've 80 other experts, and they all bring their own uniqueness to their thing. They're all people who've discovered the fix, or they're just brilliant at explaining their particular fix to whatever the hiring challenge is that they have expertise in. And I love this. I get excited when I find somebody who not only found the fix, but excites you about the fix. And I'm like, right, how do I bring that to 100,000 recruiters tomorrow? How do I get more people to just know what I know now? Because yesterday was a bad day because I didn't know this thing. And I regret all the days up to today because I didn't know this unique fix. But now I'm excited for tomorrow because I now know the fix. And I just know everyone else would have the same feeling if they just got to this content.
Right. So the least my next question really is so it's the content piece and content providers. Yeah, you've got a pretty large stable of folk helping you out with these fixes and these short videos. How is that arranged as a business? Do you recruit them? Do you sort of find someone and say that you're interesting, I want to talk to you, and then it's sort of a contract and it's sort of ongoing or one off, or how do you structure how do you work with and find your content providers, I guess?
Yeah, so our expertise is we have an in-house production team. So we produce all of the video content ourselves. So we've got videographers, editors, that kind of stuff, right? And but what we do is the content is owned, the IP of the content is owned by the content providers, the authors, the experts, right? So it's a bit like, you know, a record label where you kind of go, you know, they're the artists, it's their music, and you're, you know, exclusively distributing it. But you're going to package the album, you're going to make the cover, the vinyl, print them back in the day, and all that kind of stuff. That's kind of where we are. But like the artist owns the music, and you try and basically get that out there. So what we do is we go try and find people, and you know, I'm at conferences like you are, Martin. You see great people. I'm kind of looking for good people all the time. I'm reading books. I'm reading articles. I'm just getting recommendations of people. So we kind of we bring people in, and we have a couple of levels of tests, if you like, for individuals. You know, we might get somebody involved if it's quite light interaction. Maybe they write a blog with us, or maybe they'll do a live webinar, or they'll do a podcast or an interview. And what we'll do is we'll figure out, you know, whether they're right for our platform through an interaction like that, or we'll just do a straight up screen test, and we'll give them a piece of content to deliver, and we'll film it. And most people fall down there because, you know, being a great presenter or writer or author, it doesn't always translate to doing, you're recording to a blank screen. There's no one in the room giving you feedback, and it doesn't work for everybody. We try and coach people through that. Some people just don't get through it. It's not natural with them. So we've learned through our mistakes over the years. But we partner with those individuals. Some people just have an idea they want to get out there, and they work with us for free. And we, you know, they promote themselves on our platform. But we don't, to be clear, we don't promote any people, or we don't promote any products. But, you know, if the person has authority and expertise and something to share, they have to explain where they're coming from. So they have to say, hey, I'm Martin Burns and I work for this company, and this is my knowledge and why I have it. And we find that works for a lot of our authors. They just get great engagement, and that helps whatever other business they're in. Other authors, we have royalty shares, we have upfront payments. So it depends on your arrangement. You know, some of our more long-standing contributors who contribute a lot of content to our platform would have royalty agreements where they're getting checks from social talents quite regularly for how their content is used. Others just get once-off payments. They run a company, they have this one idea they want to share with the world, and we'll pay them once off, and then basically it's on our platform. So there's a few different models that we work there, but it's no different to any sort of artist media distribution, whether it be linked, whether it be something like Netflix or Spotify. Again, the same thing. You have somebody who might just be happy to be on the platform for free, but most people would, you know, are getting a royalty, or they're getting a payment for that. And it's, you know, going forward, you know, I see that world is moving much more towards the content distributor taking the risk, making more fixed payments. You see this with Netflix, you see this with Spotify, where they were all on pure royalty models, where the artist assumes all the risk, and only if it's a success do you make royalties. And, you know, the vast majority of people don't make much money. So we're kind of more going, right, well, you know, we are, you know, we're 9-10 years into this now. We kind of know what works and what doesn't work, and we kind of figure out we should be able to vet somebody and price it in advance and agree a payment that then we assume the risk. It's up to us then to sell that and get the world to use it, if you like. Because our platform, Martin, again, like Netflix or Spotify, once you have the platform, you have all access. And then it's just based on consumption. So the best content wins. We're always trying to deploy winners. We release new content every 2 weeks, and we want everything to be a winner, to be a top 10 hit with our users. And we have NPS scores, user feedback. We have a lot of analytics that measure, does content land well? And we analyze the first 7 days, the first month, the first quarter, to understand, did this work with the user base? And if it didn't land, you know, we have metrics that show us that it's not the right content, and we'll quickly move to swap that out or change it with something that does land better.
Makes sense. So on that note, so have you had any really significant bits of, maybe like a piece of content that you weren't sure was going to hit and was a big hit, or maybe one you thought this is just beautiful, this is great, that just tanked?
We launched a course called Recruiting in a Crisis at the end of March. When COVID hit, we had to move out of our offices, went virtual, and we no studio, we no place. We're like, how do we film content? We had to pause our releases. Our roadmap that we planned, we're like, does this fit in the modern world? Like the content we're planning to release, is this what our customers want right now with these changes? So the first piece of brand new content that we filmed and released, and we filmed it in our head of content's bedroom. She set her bedroom up as a studio, and she filmed this content really, really well. Was on recruiting in a crisis, how to stay relevant. And it was just so popular. And it was just practical steps and suggestions that, and I heard user feedback afterwards, many users giving me feedback going, like, it was a turning point for them. They were literally going, because a lot of our users literally had nothing to work on in March. They had no recs, they had nothing. And they were kind of going, do I have a job? Like, what's happening? Everything just froze. And their bosses didn't have anything to tell them because they didn't know what was going on until the Q2 started. And this, for many people, was just kind of going, here's things you can do that are really practical advice, like get back to your candidates, ring your gold medalists, see what's happening in their world, gain some insights, start pipelining talent, start cleaning up your candidate experience, your ATS, like practical stuff. And people just got busy. And we got great feedback afterwards. And that really landed. We were like, it was opportunistic in some ways, going, hey, this might land. I don't know. Do people want this content? And it was all put together in about 2 weeks. And it was enormously successful and still remains successful. Like, it has a shelf life, don't get me wrong. But then we also, we've made content. We've worked with authors. Won't name any, but we've worked with authors where I'm just so excited about the project and the content. And, you film them, we put a lot of hard work and effort into it. And it goes live and like 80 people watch it. And then the next week it drops to 60, the next week to 40. And you're going, oh shit. This is just, it's not going to work. And sometimes it doesn't work because it's an obscure topic. And we got to balance. Sometimes, we have to produce content that is only for a niche of our audience. Like, we launched executive search recruiting courses there 2 weeks ago, campus recruiting courses, early career hire recruiting courses 2 weeks before that. Like, they're not going to have the same success as some of our content because they're not written for everyone. You have to build content that's for different niche. So you got to balance the volume of consumption with the quality. Maybe only 48 people watch it, but for those 48 people, it was game changing. And so that's where we've recently introduced, NPS scoring in our platform and stuff, and ratings by our users to not just measure it by how popular it was, but to say, well, some content's niche and it's going to mean the world to a tiny number of people, but it's really important to have it in there. And so that's kind of where we are now.
That's smart too. With those niche pieces, is the price point still all kind of equivalent, or is it, do you charge more for certain unique pieces, or?
So to our customers, they, we at its core, we sell two products, Martin. Our professional product, which is built towards TA professionals. Mm-hmm. So you're a talent acquisition professional, and it's your core learning platform. And the other is what we call enterprise. And enterprise is how do you teach an entire organization how to hire. So it includes the users who will be in the professional world, but it also includes hiring managers, HRBPs, interview panelists. And it's the alignment across all those groups. And in both situations, you get a full library of content, and it's more than you'll ever need. And then you'll pick and choose to deploy what's right for your business right now for what user. So you have various different user types. Some of our more complex customers who might have, one of our customers has thousands of recruiters on the platform. They have very different learning paths based on 60, 70 different role types in their TA org structure. And each person's at a different level in their career, progressing through different content. And then the business has different focuses for different quarters. So you can have a candidate experience quarter, an interview question, improve interviewing quarter, where they focus on something. So we give them the entire library, and then they basically satisfy the entire organization's needs based on that library. What is different though is with our royalty partners. So again, you asked about the models that we work with partners on. If you're working with a partner who this content is very niche, then it doesn't make sense for that partner to be on a royalty because they won't make any money. Right. But it's important. It's strategic, let's say, for us. So therefore, it makes much more sense to work with that partner on an upfront basis. Because strategic content, we need to have it because you can't leave anyone out of the recruiting team. You have to have content for everybody. So we'll make sure it's in there. And that's how we'll basically be more selective about how we reimburse certain niche providers.
Makes sense.
That's how it works.
Yeah, I'm thinking it's almost in a way kind of a loss leader for some of those niche pieces. You may make zero revenue or very little because it's a smaller audience, et cetera. But you're satisfying the needs. You're showing a richer ecosystem. So it's
Big time. If you're a head of talent acquisition or talent, you want to buy a platform for your entire team.
right.
And if 10% of the team are left out, you'll go elsewhere. So that final 10%, whilst it's a small fraction of the users who watch it, it's critical to getting, what our solution is a full enterprise solution. It's a full hiring team. It's for very large organizations who have complex hiring needs.
Mm-hmm.
We're not for just the sourcers or just the TA folks or just the team in the US. Our USP is that we're the solution that works for all levels of complexity at all sizes of team in all parts of the world. And that's the price you got to pay to have a product like that.
So who do you compete with typically? Who do you come up against?
So like I could argue nobody, right?
Yeah, but that's not true usually. So
It's not like so our biggest competitor is a team that say we can just do this ourselves, right? You have a team of a couple hundred recruiters who say, you know what, we're gonna get some people in our team who have this knowledge and best practice, and we're going to basically record some videos or make some articles or build our own learning content around this and put it on our enterprise learning platform. That's the biggest competitor. It's an easy one to compete against because there's limits to what an organization knows, and you don't have the benefit of the external world, which is what we bring, the best practice outside your company. So that option usually only lasts about a year, and then they run out of ideas, and then they kind of go, right, what's new, what's different? Whereas we provide that constantly, right? But we also provide, there's still our niche players who do a more direct version of what we do. So obviously AIRS, which was much more popular when we started in the US, is still around to a degree. There's still people doing AIRS courses. I saw that they developed some new updates after COVID. A long time since I came across a customer using AIRS, but AIRS was one of those areas I was reasonably excited about. It was kind of a not dissimilar model. And there's in the UK, there's Recruitment Juice, but they focus on the staffing agency world. And they train staffing agencies. Most of these organizations either just sell courses like AIRS do, or they have a niche platform that's like UK agencies like Recruiting Juice does. We used to have courses that we sold online, and kind of our early stage, first couple of years of the platform was just really courses online. But when you're a complex, large organization, you have different needs at different times. And, you go to somewhere like AIRS and go, they've got this particular course. What are the chances that suits every organization or every person in the organization? Minimal. Our customers use our algorithms and their tools in our system to handpick courses for their teams really quickly in our system. And, technically you can build completely unique content for your team, and your competitor could be using our platform and they have completely different content deployed to their team. And our platform allows you to mix in third-party content, your own content. So it's much more agile. So we're really that hybrid of, a content provider, of which there are many, and the platform that allows you to quickly deploy that and merge it all together. So I guess, you can hack together a competitor, and people do, or they have, in-house trainers. But I think post-pandemic, we're seeing that a lot of organizations they're realizing that in a complex global organization, having trainers fly around and train all your recruiters ain't going to happen. Ain't going to happen anytime soon.
Yeah, no, I think that's true. So speaking of COVID, how has it impacted your business? I mean, I know you shut down, you went remote, so that's the operational level. But how's it going in terms of business development? Any learnings? Any radical changes? Or
Yeah, so structurally, we're a privately owned company. We've been self-funded. We've no investment at all to get to where we are. So when you don't have big VC backing, you got to make sure you protect your staff first. So I had to make sure that we cut costs and streamline the business early in March 2020 to protect the business. So once we'd gone through that, and we didn't have a clue how it would affect our pipeline, it did affect our engagement. Our platform usage doubled by the end of March and stayed high for many, many months as learning became a more important thing. So more users per company were on our platform, and they were spending more time on our platform. That's leveled off in the last month. Over the summer, it leveled off, as it always does in learning. You get less learning done in summer and at Christmas, right? But that was a big plus that, the usage of our platform went to the highest levels it's ever been, right? Which shows the increased need for online learning. But the amount of companies out there, our product is still today focused mainly on hiring. And there's less companies hiring at volume. So that's obviously affected our pipeline. It's affected many of our customers who, we've one customer who deployed social talent to their 120 recruiters in December. They now have 7 recruiters. So when you have a customer who bought 120 licenses and now only have 7 people who could actually benefit from this product, that's a challenge, right? So we've worked with our customers to try and find other ways for them to leverage the value of our product, to extend the usage of that. And we've just kind of had to move our new business team to focus on the industries and sectors and companies that are anti-cyclical, that are growing out of hiring. But it's also, thankfully, we've begun about a year ago to expand further our curriculum. Our ambition is to really, tackle talent development and talent management in an organization. Hiring being attraction and recruiting being the first 2 stages in the employee life cycle. You've arguably 6 kind of core stages, from attraction to recruitment, to onboarding, to development, to retention, to exit. And, we see ourselves as, being the platform that bring the best practice in the world of how to do all those parts, all the people parts, to anyone in your organization who is responsible for people. So your leaders, your managers. We started with sourcing, then recruiting, then hiring. So it's trying to expand that remit. And we already begun to introduce curriculum around that. So we had onboarding curriculum, which we quickly adjusted to be virtual onboarding. And so a lot of our customers just, started saying, well, we have to virtually onboard. We haven't touched onboarding in years. And we're like, we have enablement on that. We're learning on that. Okay, we knew our managers are not really good at managing because they've never had to manage properly. Now there's an intense focus on it. How can they be better managers? And we have the beginning of our curriculum there, and we're accelerating some of that. And we've always had we've been really passionate since day one about diversity and inclusion. And we've had a lot of content in there for recruiters and hiring managers about how do you hire more diverse talents and how do you focus on being a more inclusive organization. And I'll be honest with you, for many years, a lot of our customers were like, why this? Focus on just the recruiting piece. And we, our business was very, very much believing that this is just important. So we kind of snuck it in. We were like, we'll sneak some of this into a learning path, and we'll try and inspire somebody to fix the inclusivity problem in their business, even though it's not the recruiter's job to fix that. Let's try and make them passionate about it. So we did that for years, and right now that's obviously hugely important. It's always been important, but it's got a new level of importance with the focus on social justice. So that's been an area that we've had a lot of our customers saying, right, we may not be hiring, but your content on how we become a more inclusive organization and the speakers you already have on your platform, that we want them, maybe for different people, to watch that content. Can we do that? We've been redeploying licenses, and we've been looking at how do we bring more of that and then tweak it very slightly, because there has been a lot of changes and people have different priorities. So again, that's been an area we've tried to expand towards faster. An area we were always going in and we had a lot of content in. And that's, to me, COVID, and back to the point about how an industry changes, it's accelerated a lot of the talent issues that most of us felt were coming or changing. And I think the opportunity there for us is to accelerate with that, is to kind of go, right, how do we go faster in the direction we were already going in? Because organizations have other challenges beyond hiring right now. And we always intended to solve them, but we made to solve them faster and bring more experts with more passionate, brilliant ideas on how to basically solve retention, how to solve onboarding, how to solve dealing with difficult employees or conversations or multicultural issues. We feel that there's a right and wrong way of doing it. And our strategy, Martin, is always to basically find the best way of doing something and then try and share that with our customers. Different to some other providers like LinkedIn Learning, who might have 76 versions of how to onboard a talent. We'll try and go, what's the best way to do it? What does the science say? What do companies say? What do the experts say? Let's find that and then deliver that to our customers. So right now, that's our challenge, is going out there for our customers to find, first of all, what are their challenges? Their retention is a big challenge. So is DE&I. They're the 2 big topics that most companies are coming to us and sharing with us. And how do we basically find great speakers? We have a lineup of great speakers starting in September, brand new speakers talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, talking about how do you retain talent. And they're people that hopefully you will know and you'll see them when they're announced. And that's kind of the direction we're going in, to try and not just, not to ignore hiring, but just to recognize that our customers have other talent issues that they want to solve. And we feel that having partnered with them to solve their hiring issues, we're the right partner for those wider talent issues.
Good. It's really helpful. It's interesting too. I know we're coming up on time here, Steve. If you have to roll off soon, let me know. I'm getting toward, what's wonderful about these kind of conversations is quite often the questions I've teed up get answered along the way. So I'm sort of scanning through roles I wanted to touch on before we wrap up. I was curious, what's the culture like at Social Talent as an organization, and has it changed once you've gone virtual?
So the culture is experimental, right? Again, we're trying to share with the world a better way of managing talent. Mm-hmm. And so we experiment internally to see how we do it. And we get it right and we get it wrong. So we give people a lot of autonomy, a lot of flexibility. We're very people focused, but we fuck up, right? And that's just the nature of it. And we always try to learn, but it's a very learning culture. We kind of try and look back and go, right, what did we do wrong? And how do you motivate people? How do you engage people? It's very important to us. We're not always brilliant at it. We're not always brilliant at developing great leaders, but the aspiration of the entire business is to be better in all those areas. And so you'll never be shut down for supporting an initiative that can make us a better business around our talent, because that is immensely important to us. So it frustrates some people because some leaders, you might get frustrated because we give people too much autonomy, and maybe their style is perhaps more rigid from the company they used to work for. And myself and Vince will try and just make it more about the people. We'll invest in them more. We give them more benefits. We give them hopefully better opportunities, make it a more fun place to work, more flexibility. We've always done that. It backfires on you sometimes. That's what I've learned. And as we evolve with our talent curriculum, we're very much conscious of the fact that we need to evolve as a company with that. We can't go out and tell the world this is how you should manage talent when we're not doing it and living it ourselves. I think it's also important to share. It's hard. I'm going to share that stuff. But the virtual world, some of it was easy because we'd already instituted, flexibility around working from home. All of our team, apart from our developers, are living in Ireland, selling 99% export, mainly to the US, some to the UK and Western Europe. So we've always sold to somebody who's on the end of a phone or a Zoom call. So the move virtually from that perspective was quite seamless. Culturally, though, we're quite a close business, and I think most people would see the kind of team as family. So it's difficult to go through that transition. And we've had to get used to that and put the structures in place like everybody has around, regularity, certainty for the future. And, we said many months ago that we wouldn't be reopening our office space until January. And at the same time, we also announced that we were moving to virtual first. So rather than saying we're going to have an office back open in a certain date and you can have flexibility, we said from today onwards, this was many months ago, we are virtual first. When we reopen office space, it will be only for those of you who need a desk to sit on that's not in your home because it suits you. We actually will be running all meetings virtually. All hands will go virtually. This is the way forward. And we're still in that process of trying to learn from companies who've been there before a long time about what works, what doesn't work, to try and build the infrastructure for that. Because it isn't easy. But we've chosen to go virtual first because I think it is the way companies will eventually go who can, professional companies that don't need to physically be in a location. It's the right way. It's the ethical thing, but it's not for everybody. So I think you can't just say we're virtual first, virtual only. You've got to go virtual first and recognize that not everyone has a room or a place in their home that's quiet, or they just don't want that. They want to go and hang out where people are. So it's kind of recognizing that that's the balance. But I guess prior to the pandemic, office would have been our priority. So meetings would have been in person, and you could have dialed in, but the experience for dialing was poor. Now it's going to be virtual first. So even if some of us meet in person, it's going to be completely designed around virtual. And if you want to be there in person, fine. And that's a big transition that we're not finished on, and God knows we'll never be finished on. But I think it's exciting. I think it opens up more opportunities for our employees. 70% of our employees, when we surveyed them, said that they'd never want to go to an office again, and 30% said they'd like the option of going to an office if they, when they need to. And 0 said I want to go back and work in an office full time. So I guess we're building it around what our team wants, because that's what a talent-driven business should do.
I agree. And it's interesting. It also gives you a chance to pull in talent from other locations. if you need to. You're not as
So
constrained by geography.
it doesn't, Martin, right? So
Okay.
if you're a big enterprise, it's easy. We are still constrained by, we can only legally employ certain people
Ooh,
who are
yeah,
resident in Ireland.
the law that's fair.
And
Yeah.
and our customers have had this challenge. You've had recruiters going, I can hire from anywhere. It's like, no, because a legal entity has to employ them. And therefore, we have to have a legal entity up and running. And then the bureaucracy of an enterprise is, do we have headcount that legal entity has, because we haven't progressed to that yet. So there are challenges, right? Not just for us, for any company. And the ideas you have, which is, I can hire people from anywhere. It's not actually that easy. So I'd like it to get to that point. I think global legislation around employment has to catch up. Could take 5 years for it to catch up to that kind of a world. Because I think that's how it is, right? You're having to go through subcontractors to get around legalities, which is nonsense when we're all just at the end of a virtual link like this. But you have other challenges around, like to be truly virtual and global virtual. You have to actually focus. If you understand how other businesses have done it in successfully in the past, you move a lot towards more documenting information, because you don't know if somebody's going to be available in the same time zone as you for meetings, for interactions. So the documentation of information is really important in a truly virtual business. And it takes a while to get that habit, and we're not there yet. So we're not ready for people who aren't roughly in our time zone. So we're going to hire within our time zone. We're legally restricted to hire within Ireland for the moment, but you can probably get around it if we had some real needs to do contracting through other countries. But it's not ideal. So I want to go to hiring anywhere. But even in Ireland, it's a tiny country, Martin, as you know. But like, people want to get out of the city, so we now have flexibility to not be in Dublin city centre.
Mhm.
And there's great talent all over the country. And some of our team have decided to relocate outside the city and buy
Yeah, no,
homes or rent outside the city as well.
matches trends are happening here.
Yeah.
I live maybe about an hour, well, without traffic, Sunday, 50 minutes to Boston from where we are up the coast. But yeah, with traffic longer. And during that snowstorm, it can be hours, right? And then there's a train, but still, it's not ideal to commute to Boston from here typically. But we're seeing home values spiking across the entire little city. It's a nice place to live. It's bucolic, et
Yeah.
cetera. It's no water.
Yeah.
It's what you want, where you want to live. But if you're working in Boston, it's tougher. But now with what's happening, we're seeing. I mean, you put us in the market right now online in this town. You sight unseen, you'll get 10, 20, thousand more than you listed it for within like 24 hours. Because people are moving out of the cities, and
Yeah.
I'm seeing
Yeah.
that kind of
Yeah.
nationwide too here. So I'm not surprised you're seeing the same thing in Ireland.
But
We're kind of
we're seeing, like, in commercial real estate as well. Like,
yeah,
I'm
sure.
looking at options now for, I don't want my office anymore because it's one location in one city. That doesn't make sense to me. But the likes of WeWork doesn't solve for that, because they're still major city oriented. So they
Mhm.
have this kind of spoken wheel type idea where there's new property companies emerging where they are purposely located in small towns outside of the main cities, and they give you the flexibility of, or, renting a desk or a number of desks on any given day across their entire network. So it's like mini we work, it's like
Mhm.
deliberately not the
Mhm.
city. And I
Mhm.
think that's I'm excited about that what does that look like, that model, because it's not quite there yet. But as that expands, like, I think you have the ruralization of professional business, but uh, our infrastructure isn't quite there yet for that. It's, people want to get to that point, but like, we've looked in Ireland and just aren't enough options available yet. They'll come, I'm sure they're happening in other cities, but it's like, how do you get out of the cities where someone still doesn't need to go to an office, but they want to go in a town, in a village, and not, because commuting to any city is a nightmare. And once you realize you don't need to be in the big city, you don't need to be in small cities either. So you're kind of like, my village has 20 stores. Can I just find a desk there if I need to get out of the office, out of my home? Like, anyway, so I'm intrigued to see, back to, it's not just work, talent world. I think there'll be loads of innovation. It's everything. To your point about the rainstorm, as the flowers and mushrooms emerged, I think they'll emerge in every sector and every type of business.